All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Liz Novosel, and I have the pleasure of introducing Robin Ennis this morning for our first session on this Monday for the 2024 CU Boulder Disability Symposium. I am a white female with blue eyes and graying brown hair. It's shoulder length. I'm wearing a black sweatshirt, and I have white earphones in. So the University of Colorado Boulder is hosting the Disability Symposium to acknowledge that more work must be done to improve the inclusion of people with disabilities on the Boulder campus. Efforts to improve inclusion must focus on students, staff, and faculty. The 2024 CU Boulder, 2021, I'm sorry, CU Boulder Campus Climate Survey Report, which was released in April of 2022, found that 44% of our undergraduate students and 47% of our graduate students reported experiencing incivility within the last year of that survey. For students with disabilities, these numbers climbed to 54% and 62% respectively. So this symposium is intended to be a springboard to continue campus-wide conversations on how each of us can improve inclusion on campus and improve support for all persons with disabilities. The symposium organizers would also like to take a moment to issue a land acknowledgement. The University of Colorado Boulder, Colorado's flagship university, honors and recognizes the many contributions of Indigenous peoples in our state. CU Boulder acknowledges that it is located on the traditional territories and ancestral homelands of the Cheyenne, Arapaho, Ute, and many other Native American nations. Their forced removal from these territories has caused devastating and lasting impacts. While the University of Colorado Boulder can never undo or rectify the devastation wrought on these peoples, we commit to improving and enhancing engagement with Indigenous peoples and issues that are happening locally and globally, which we will do by recognizing and amplifying the voices of Indigenous CU Boulder students, staff, and faculty and their work, educating, conducting research, supporting student success, and integrating Indigenous knowledge, and consulting, engaging, and working collaboratively with tribal nations to enhance our ability to provide access and culturally sensitive support to recruit, retain, and graduate Native American students in a climate that is both inclusive and respectful. So this morning we have Robin Ennis with us. She is the LEND Self-Advocacy Discipline Director at CU Anschutz. Let's see, so Robin has a BA in Sociology and Communication and an MSW in Clinical Social Work from the University of Denver. She is a licensed social worker in the state of Colorado. In addition, she holds national certifications in the areas of life coaching and grief recovery, and she completed the JFK Partners LEND training program in 2019 and 20. So with that, I am going to share my screen and I will be helping with slides this morning. So any issues with those are my mistake alone. So Robin, I'm going to, I'm sharing.
Okay. Thank you, Elizabeth. So the first slide is say my name and my title. I think.
Yes, the first one is your CU Boulder Disability Symposium by Robin Ennis.
Gotcha.
Disability. Oh, I didn't even say the title. The title of this presentation is Disability, Inclusion, and Belonging in the Classroom.
All right. Well, thank you, Elizabeth. So Elizabeth is going to be my collaborator. I told her, or I didn't tell her, I asked her to, if I'm going off track with the slides to kind of gear me back, because I've been known to lose track of the slides during presentations. But I actually, before I go into my spill, Elizabeth, can you go to the second slide?
I am there, yes.
So if you're able to click on the QR code on the screen, or if you're able to click on the link, it'll take you to a pre-survey just to ask you a few questions in regards to, your knowledge surrounding disability and inclusion in the classroom. And as you're doing that, I'll keep going on. Slide 3. So the objectives of today's presentation is recognizing what is universal design and how to recognize it. Many people have heard of it, but don't really know the steps or strategies to employ it within the classroom, and also to the impact that universal design can have on a person. And so speaking about that, as we're going on today, I want you to think about your college experience, if you were able to attend college, or if you're currently attending school, thinking about what that experience was like for you in the classroom, what worked, and what did you find that could have been improved on to make you feel like you could have had a more sense of inclusion and belonging. And I think that the more that we're able to put ourselves in a situation, the more we're able to recognize or to try and empathize with what somebody is going through. And you may not be able to truly, nobody can truly understand what somebody's going through, but you can get a glimpse of what it's like. And I feel like that can be helpful. And so, let's see. Hold on. So, the next slide is, what is universal design, right? Universal design is making products accessible to where it can be whatever the task is, it can be achievable by anyone of all abilities, of all sizes, of all any type of background. They have the ability to be able to fully participate in the environment at hand. And so I'm going to use myself as a case study. I am a blind individual, so I use identity first language. And I also too want to back up because Elizabeth did set the precedence of describing herself. And so the reason that she does that too is for accessibility for people who have visual impairments, so that we can be able to get a broader understanding of what people look like, right? Because the way that we dress, the way it says a lot about our personality. Although I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, because I've also been notorious for saying the wrong thing in terms of what I'm wearing. But I am a Black female. I have earbuds in, and I have small silver hoops. I am Black American, and I am wearing a jacket. I believe it is a black jacket. I threw it on this morning, and I am wearing a short sleeve camisole in between, and my hair is pulled up in a ponytail. And so that level of description is also to a form of universal design, right? It creates accessibility to create an understanding of who is around me or other people with visual impairments, and parts of their identity, how they identify, which is a big piece of information. So back to myself, as I'm going to use a case study throughout our presentation today. I was not always born, or I wasn't born completely blind. When I was a baby, I was diagnosed with a medical condition, a brain condition called hydrocephalus. And it's a Greek word, and it's a word that many people mispronounce. But hydro means water and cephalus means head. So it's an abnormal accumulation of cerebral spinal fluid in the brain. And there's a device implanted in the brain to drain the fluid. in another part of the body. And if the treatment is not sought, it can be fatal. And it's actually the second leading cause for emergency room visits for children. Um, and the device that's implanted to drain the fluid is called a shunt. And it has a 50% failure rate within the first 3 years that it's implanted. So you'll meet a lot of people who have hydrocephalus who have had quite a bit of surgeries. I met an 18-year-old who had 100 brain surgeries. And so I haven't had that many surgeries, but when I was younger, I had quite a bit of surgeries. And so that definitely impacted my learning and how I showed up in a classroom. Um, and for 13 years, I went without surgery, which was very good. When I turned 18 and I went away for my freshman year of college, to which I had to really beg my parents, I wanted to experience what it was like to be able to go away, right? When you turn 18, again, thinking back, when you turned 18, a lot of us wanted to have that level of independence, that excitement. We knew everything. Nobody could tell us anything at that age. So I wanted to go away, and I had options. I could either go to stay in Denver because I'm born and raised, or I could go to Kansas or Oklahoma where my mom had family. So I chose Oklahoma, and I was having fun, right? I was meeting new people, enjoying dorm life, and I unexpectedly became sick with my hydrocephalus again, my freshman year of college. So luckily, I had my aunt who was nearby, and we went to emergency room visits, which again impacted my learning, right? Going back and forth to emergency rooms. And with my hydrocephalus too, I received extended time testing in school because of it takes me a while to process information that's given to me in large chunks. So on top of me getting sick and being in a new environment, I was navigating testing accommodations and homework accommodations as well. Unfortunately, at the end of my freshman year, I was still um, getting sick even after emergency room visits, and I was collapsing a lot while on campus. And ultimately, the fluid that was building up in my brain, because my doctors misdiagnosed the symptoms, and so the fluid kept building up in my brain and then went to my optic nerve and caused permanent blindness as a result. And so when I had my surgery for my hydrocephalus, they found that um, my shunt was completely demolished. And so they thought my vision would come back, but unfortunately it didn't. And I'm sharing this story with you again because we all have a story, and you never know. I can't reiterate this enough. You never know what somebody else's story is. And I think that as we get older or get more into our field, whatever it may be in terms of education, it's that humanistic, point of view of students can kind of get lost in the shuffle. So it's just important to remember that when interacting with students within your classroom or peers. So after my eyesight didn't come back, I took a year off from school trying to figure out what my new normal was. And it wasn't a matter of if I was going to go back to school, but rather how I was going to be able to go back to school. And so my parents um, helped me fill out the application, and um, register with the Office of Disabilities Access Services within the University of Denver. Um, and so that was really, really hard because I feel like in life I've experienced two different perspectives, right? One as a sighted individual in education, and then going back as one as a blind individual in education. And that's completely different ways of learning, because it's really trying to figure out how I can be able to access the same material without eyesight. And a lot of professors, when I went to both undergrad and grad, and also too, I didn't mention this, is that I am currently getting my doctorate in social work, so I'm back in school. Um, and so in all of my educational experiences, I've been the only completely blind individual within the class, or if I haven't been in the whole school, maybe like there's been a handful. So there's been a lot of instances where I've collaborated with professors and we work together to figure out what works best for me. And that's what I feel like universal design is, right? Is working with an individual to see what works best for them to make the learning environment more inclusive, so that it can be a evolving experience for everyone, so that the student can be able to learn and achieve to their fullest capability. Um, and so as I thought my story would be a good one to use as a case study, because again, I've witnessed what it's like from both sides of it. And so as we're going through the different types, the 7 types of universal design, I want you to keep my story in mind and think about what tools would best help me, or what can make the classroom experience more beneficial from a visual impairment standpoint. But then even if you want to broaden it from somebody who has a disability where they're in a wheelchair, or a learning disability, who's hearing impaired, whatever it may be. I'm just trying to think about, okay, how would I be able to adapt the learning environment so that a student can have inclusion and belonging. And uh, Elizabeth, next slide, the one with the 7 universal design.
Yep.
Okay. So equitable use. This is where the product can be used by people of multiple abilities. And so think about it, if this could be a classroom, right? Looking at the seating, making sure that there's seating at the end available if there's individuals with wheelchairs, making sure that the table is at a good height, or even somebody who's height impaired, making sure that if that's the case, that a table can be, or a desk can be lowered or raised to accommodate size. And if we're doing group projects in the classroom, somebody with a visual impairment, okay, would it be easier to have people come to them versus the person with the visual impairment going and finding the group? And that's one thing that I had when I did in-person class activities, is the students in my group would come to me, and that was a form of accommodation. So flexible in use, again, accommodates a variety of needs, whether it's preference. And so this is closed captioning, or audio descriptions, or even alt text. And Elizabeth, the PowerPoint that we're doing, Elizabeth, in the first couple of slides, did alt text to be able to help me understand what those slides looked like, to which I greatly appreciate. Because alt text, what it does is anybody can put a description in to capture the main visual aspects that you feel like would be important for somebody with a visual impairment. And Microsoft Word, Microsoft PowerPoint, they have really good accessibility options. If you go to tools, there's an option that says accessibility, and when you click on that, then it gives you, you can test the reading ability for people who, if you want to incorporate more of plain language for those who have learning disabilities. It has, again, options to create alt text. And it also has an accessibility checker. And I encourage everyone to do this in and out of the classroom to understand how accessible your documents are, electronic or paper, because it can be very frustrating as if you're coming across a document and you really want to get it done and it's not accessible. And especially if you have, like for me, I live by myself. So if I want help, then I have to wait a while for somebody to come and help me versus getting it done by myself. So that's one thing to take into consideration. And audio description, it's where in videos where the crucial elements are spoken out loud. So how Elizabeth and I described ourselves, that's what they do in movies. So they'll say a tall middle-aged man walks through the door, and hands a cup of coffee, to somebody, or something like that. But it creates a scene for people to be able to visualize. So if you're able to, if you're showing videos, it can be advantageous to show an audio descriptive video. And that can help even sighted individuals understand, different forms of technology. Or if you don't do that, which now at Netflix and YouTube has some audio descriptive videos. More platforms are being able to do that. But even if you aren't able to have an audio described video, it can be advantageous to send out a video to the student with the particular disability so that they can be able to process and understand the video and get assistance if needed, versus being in the classroom and not having that level of support. And as I was preparing for this, it made me think of how in many environments, again, being the only blind individual as I am in my current doctorate program, I find it really rewarding when people take the initiative and want to learn about accessibility tools, how to best help me feel included, but then also to taking it outside of our schools so that they can be able to interact with other people with disabilities. But one example of how showing any type of media that's not accessible can cause a person to feel alienated in a classroom. So in last semester, in one of my teaching classes, we had to pick a topic and teach the whole class on it. And one of my peers decided to show, and it was a good illustration. I see where she was going, but she wanted to show a video on social justice, but it was a silent video. And so it was all visual, no words spoken out loud. And I tried to message her privately in Zoom so that I wouldn't put her on the spot. But unfortunately, she didn't see the message because I was asking her if she could describe what was being shown. And when I realized that she didn't I did the chat to everyone and asked if she could visually describe the film. And so she still didn't see it. And so one of the students had brought it to her attention, hey, Robin wasn't able to visually see the film that you showed. So she's asking if you could visually describe it for her. And then the student did. But I feel like I think that was a learning experience for her too, to know who her audience is. And although we had been in class, I think for a couple of months at that point, I get, because I'm maybe if she's not around certain abilities, right, or if we're not represented a lot within a particular environment, then it may have slipped her mind. But I think that it's just always good to step back and know who your audience is, and try to present to everyone of all abilities. So that's one example that comes to mind about um, audio description. Simple and intuitive, that things are easy or simple to use. So that goes back to plain language, especially in academics. Sometimes the language may not be understood by somebody with a learning disability. So in Microsoft Word, or trying to, I know that I think AI does this now too, is putting your document in there and understanding what reading level it's at. And for plain language, it can be between fifth and sixth grade learning level, 18-inch fonts, or 18 to 24-inch font, but just trying to make it more achievable for people within the classroom. Tolerance for error. I think as we go along, again, it's a learning journey. So it's trying to minimize room for mistakes, but also too, I feel like it's recognizing that mistakes will happen and it's still moving forward. There's like the video that I had mentioned, right? That was a mistake that student had did, but it's learning from that mistake, and trying to again realize the impact that a simple accommodation can have on someone. It doesn't have to be perfect. Another example that I've used is obstacles in the walkway. So this goes back to even the structure of a classroom, making sure that if somebody's in a wheelchair, whatever mobility device that they're using, that they have a clear path to maneuver through, so that they won't hurt themselves or other people. Low physical effort where things can be used comfortably. So like doors that open automatically, and some classroom doors have that directly. So that's a part of universal design, and again, the seating options as well. Sometimes I will sit in the back of the classroom because it's closer to the door. It's more accessible for me that way. And let's see. And then I think, Elizabeth, the next slide would be the video.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so we can keep going.
Okay.
Incorporating universal design in the classroom. So I've given a few examples in regards to my my visual impairment, but I want you to think about how you would be able to incorporate it within a classroom, and what that would look like. You can use me as a direct reference, but really thinking about, okay, how can I be able to incorporate different tools. And so it's providing multiple options. So whether it's through online, which that's where my doctorate program is through, it's through strictly online. So there's a lot of breakout activities with groups, and that's how we get to know each other and each other's passions and strengths. And I feel like that's very helpful, and that helps me feel more a part of the group, right? Because I feel like sometimes people with disabilities, it's harder to fit in on campus because it's seen as a limitation versus an asset. And I feel like the more that people get to know about me or other people with disabilities, then it can be viewed as an asset. And so one activity that one of my professors did that I had for a couple of semesters is at the end of our time together, she had each person write a comment about each student so that we could be able to understand how our peers see us. And so I sometimes I don't give myself credit. So I sometimes think that, okay, did that make sense? What I said? Like whenever I say something I feel that it comes across as not making sense to somebody else. And so when my peers were able to give me feedback, many of them said that that I'm smart or that I'm intelligent. And so it allows me to be able to step back and see my peers' perspective, because so many times in my educational experience, I've been alienated because of my visual impairment. And I've been left out of groups because I was not viewed as being capable. And so over time, that can kind of sink in with somebody and cause self-doubt or the imposter syndrome. So you have breakout rooms if you're doing online. You also too have the larger group discussions. You have lecture, case studies. There's even an option to do accessible polls on Zoom. And with the in-person classroom, again, breaking out into smaller groups so that people can get to know one another. Larger group activities, case studies, the same thing applies. And I feel like the more that students have the opportunity to get to know each other and work together, there can be a lessening of the misconceptions or stereotypes that people have. Let's see. Um, and then the next slide, Elizabeth, is that the one using the tools
There is a picture.
of the classroom?
But I did want to say that well, no, I
Oh,
made a mistake, and the picture of the classroom is a couple back, like
okay.
where it's your turn if you wanted
Okay.
to do that.
Oh, okay. So your turn. So think about, and if it's okay, Elizabeth, if people put it in chat or even come off mute, whatever makes you able or comfortable. But I thought we could have a discussion because I have been talking at you for a while. So if we could have a discussion about what tools do you feel would be advantageous to help somebody feel more included or belong in a classroom? And what do you think is the difference between inclusion and belonging in the classroom? Because I feel that inclusion means that you're incorporating somebody, right? You're including them in whatever it may be, but a sense of belonging is a feeling, right? Wow, I feel embraced. I feel accepted. And I feel like you can't have one without the other, because a person can be included, but they may not feel like they belong in a classroom. And I was telling somebody that in my doctorate program, I think that this is the first time that I feel like I truly belong. in a classroom. And I don't know if it's because I'm a lot older um, than I was 20 or 15 or 20 years ago. Um, but it meant a lot to me when one of my peers asked me to be a part of a text chat that um, some of my other peers have within the program. I didn't have to ask her, she asked me. And that sense, that gesture, it really makes me feel a part of the group and just how embracive everyone is. And I feel like they see me as a person. They really truly seek to support me and they view me as a colleague. And that really means a lot. So does anybody feel comfortable in, or just even talking about your own experience when you feel like you belong or when you were included in a classroom?
Ben, if it's okay with you, I'm going to stop sharing just for a minute and
Oh,
then I
yes.
can go back to the slides.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
And you can also use chat too if you don't feel comfortable.
Can you just repeat the question one more time?
Yep. So if I want you to think back to when you were in school, or if you're currently in school, whether it's as a student or as a teacher or professional, what made you feel included and belong, or what can you do to make somebody else feel included and belong, feel like they belonged, especially with the different options that we've talked about so far today.
I think one step that faculty can take to improve the sense of belongingness and inclusion in the classroom is to include statements in their syllabi that explicitly state they value the experiences and the knowledge that persons with disabilities bring to the classroom, and that they're willing to do whatever they can to help accommodate any accommodation requests by those students to help them succeed.
Yes, that's a good one, right? Whether it's diversity statements or ability statements, putting it in the syllabus to, create that level of acknowledgement, and then also too to show the individual themselves the different options that they have, because they may not know what to expect or how to advocate for themselves within a classroom. I know how I mentioned I took a year off from school, and when I went back, I didn't necessarily know, okay, well, what do I need now as a student with a visual impairment? Where do I go for that type of support? I needed that level of collaboration myself. So not only was I helping professors understand how to best support me, but I was looking for that guidance as well. So yeah, I like that. The syllabi is a good example.
Because there's a chat comment from Amy Harris saying that I think anytime there can be an opportunity for students to learn about each other, like a check-in once a week, it helps to bring closeness among the students. I have
Yep.
experienced this in my yoga teacher training.
Yeah, yep. Amy, that's very true. And that's what I was getting at too with it's hard to explain just the impact of being asked to be a part of that group chat or group text means to me, because we don't necessarily always talk about school. We talk about each other's families, what we have where we're doing for the weekend. So yeah, I do feel like it's a good learning experience, both within the classroom but outside of the classroom. Any other comments or examples?
Marissa and Robin, feel free to just unmute and share.
I would say something that I had happen with me actually at CU Boulder is I had to ask for an accommodation in a class. And I was telling the professor, I'm very sorry for the inconvenience and thank you so much. And he stopped me and said, I appreciate that, but really, you should know this accommodation is your right, and I want you to understand that. And the fact that he took the time to stop me and tell me that he's like, and if you ever get pushback, you can come to me personally and I'll help you out with that. It was just like fully supportive and just acknowledging that, which especially as a non-traditional student who came back was something I think I needed a professor to say out loud to me. It was it really changed the way I viewed asking for accommodations after that.
Yep. Yeah. I like that. I like that professor provided that level of space, space for you. I do think that's important, because I feel like whenever asking for accommodations, it's an intimidating process. And I think for some people, it's hard to ask for accommodations because you don't really know how it's going to be received by the other person, especially a professor. And I've had both positive and negative experiences when asking for accommodations. But I think that it's really indicative of a person's level of experience with helping those with varying needs.
I was just kind of, I think it's the same point. You know, I appreciate the importance of putting things in the syllabus, but I'm also aware that a lot of students kind of skim over the syllabus and may or may not read it really closely. And so I think it probably goes a little farther if you actually take a little bit of time sometime in the first week or two of classes just to explicitly state, you know, or make it obvious in as part of your instruction that you welcome knowing what people need and trying to support that as best you can.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yep. It goes back to meeting the students where they're at, right? And so I think that it goes back for everybody to do a level of self-reflection. How am I showing up in the space of a classroom? Am I being approachable? Am I creating an environment to where students feel comfortable in talking with me about if they have that particular need or accommodation? Because as you are going over that syllabi within the first couple of weeks and really emphasizing that it is a safe place to do so, it can really correlate to the demeanor that you set off with students as well.
Yeah, there are a couple of comments in the chat, so I'll read those.
Okay.
So Ezra contributed that making the effort to quickly learn and use each student's name and pronouns so they feel seen and respected as individuals in the classroom mix.
Yep.
And then Rachel added that having learning styles and differences addressed without having to be othered or ask for accommodations. This includes the physical environment. We have directions on the board, have captions turned on for everyone by default, have the room physically accessible, have the ability to ask what's needed without being called out. I'm specifically thinking of younger kids in the classroom. Acknowledge everyone learns differently. Have graph paper for all students rather than offering it to one kid who has it as an accommodation.
Yeah.
And the third one, oh, did you want to say something
Yeah,
about that?
so I do, you know, I want to mention as it goes back to, you know, I think not assuming, right? And treating everyone, you know, having multiple options, right? Not singling anybody out. I think that is, you know, very important. And it makes me think about in my doctorate program, I do get questions, you know, thrown out at me in particular about my visual impairment. And I remember my professor, she said, let's not, you know, put Robin on the spot, you know, or make her feel like she's representing, you know, a whole population. Because you're right, if you other somebody or if you single somebody out, it's good to ask questions, but if you single somebody out, it can alienate them from the class. And sometimes, you know, especially with younger people, it's really hard to fit in or find that sense of belonging. So yeah, making sure that whatever tool you use, that it is the same across the board if possible. And if not possible, then making sure that accommodation is met so that they can achieve that same goal.
Great. And so there was one more comment. As an instructor, this is from Anne.
Mhm.
I pair students randomly for group work every day so they can get to know everyone else. When I didn't used to do this, I would see students always sit in the same place and always work with the same classmates when we did pair work. I think this can lead to a greater sense of belonging, but I'm not sure about inclusion.
Right. So I feel that that's a good situation of the opposite, right? Like, I think that that is a good scenario where it could have a sense of inclusion, right? Because you're including them in the group. They're not being left out or again, alienated compared to other people. So I think that's a good example of inclusion. And for example, in my undergrad at DU, we were in a classroom and people were, and you're right, people do gravitate to that same, spot that they always sit in. So people were picking partners. And this is, I still cringe when we have to pick partners ourselves, but people were picking partners. And although I can't see, I can still hear. And so one of the students, he was an athlete, but he was going around to everybody in the room and he skipped over me and went to the person next to me asking if they had a partner. And that did not make me feel included at all. And so I feel like anytime that there's an equal playing field, whether it's assigned groups or not, that's a form of inclusion. However, a sense of belonging. So although they're in the groups, right, that you're doing, I think that there may not always be a sense of belonging, because you can be included, but a sense of belonging is, okay, I feel like they're truly listening to me. I feel like they are seeing me outside of my particular identity. They're trying to get to know me. And so it's those students' efforts that I feel like would incorporate the sense of belonging. Does that make sense to the person who asked the third question?
Hi, that was me who asked that question. And yeah, it does make sense. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for asking it.
So
And
oh, Robin, I was just going to let you know it's 9:50 right now.
okay, so I will just wrap it up.
Oh no, I think we have until 10. Is that correct?
Yes, but I want to give people time too to do the survey. But
Oh,
I
yeah,
just want to quickly add is that, I'm really glad that we're having this discussion because I feel like the college experience is one that people never forget, right? They look back on fondness. I look back on my college experience with great fondness. However, as I mentioned before, I don't think I truly had that sense of belonging, and that really does make me feel sad in a way. I didn't have any friends in my undergrad experience. I went to school and I came home. So I want to channel my experiences, moving forward so that other people won't have to go through that level of alienation that I felt. So, um, so I just want to, wrap it up. Is that universal design? There are different modalities like we talked about today, whether it's putting, incorporating messages within the syllabi, how you present the syllabi within class, your overall demeanor and presence when showing up, creating small groups for people to get to know each other. Icebreakers, can be a good one as well. I know in my doctorate program, we do a lot of icebreakers. So there's a variety of tools and techniques, and some, it's a trial and error, right? So it's trying to minimize mistakes, but also to knowing that you're trying and collaborating with each other. And going back to what Robin said too, is how that professor that she talked to provided that space of grace for her, right? It's okay to ask for accommodations. So allowing, that open dialogue with your students and understanding that it can be an intimidating process for them as well, for a myriad of reasons, whatever it may be that they're going through. But Elizabeth, if you want to pull up the PowerPoint and then go to the slide where for the survey, the last closing survey.
Yes, I will. I'm feeling like one of the links is not working, but hopefully the QR code will.
Oh, okay.
It did when I put it in there, but for whatever reason, I'm going to share the slides though.
It might have been something that I did when I wasn't
seriously doubt that. It's just, things get somehow messed up sometimes. So if anyone needs that, maybe perhaps if Braz is still here, he could share that link.
Okay.
Or Robin from I was trying to pull it up really quickly.
Okay.
But I failed.
No, that's okay. Yeah. But so, if you have any questions that weren't answered, or if you think of anything, feel free to reach out to the Braz, and maybe he can put you into contact with me. So should we end now, Elizabeth, or are we still trying to pull it up?
Oh, I was just gonna see.
I've put that in the chat.
Oh, okay.
Thank you
Gotcha.
so much, Robin.
Thank you, Robin.
See, it takes a team.
Yes, it does.
Robin, Ennis, I had one quick question for you. I wanted your opinion on something in terms of creating that belonging in a classroom. When I lead things, I tend to talk a little bit about my own stuff. Like, you shared that you were a blind individual and I am a neurodivergent individual. And how do you feel about like that sort of sharing in terms of an instructor or a leader of a session or something? Do you think that's a good way to go, or are there problems with that?
Hey, that's a good question. And so I think it's a balance, right? It's the rule of thumb is checking in with yourself and saying, okay, so what is the reasoning behind me sharing this message? And the thing is that it should be for the student's purpose, right? Making sure that you're sharing it for them and not necessarily you seeking support for yourself. And so as outside of my job with CU and Shoots, I am a private practice mental health therapist, and I help those adjust with coping and adjusting with disability. And so I share a lot of my personal experiences with my clients to be able to give them a point of reference and understanding with their own experiences. So I personally, I think it can be very helpful because it causes people to feel less alone in whatever journey they're navigating. Then also too, it helps people it humanizes, instructors or therapists or librarians, whatever it may be.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for asking that question. All right. Well, I appreciate you all attending today, and I hope, I hope you learned a lot of takeaways, and I really appreciate the dialogue.
Yes, thanks so much for this. This was a wonderful, wonderful conversation. I learned a lot.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Elizabeth. I appreciate all that you've done too.
Hey, I'm really grateful that we had Robin and David Braz here today too. So it's always really good to have support. So
Yeah.
and you've been so wonderful and flexible. And thanks everyone.
Oh, thanks. All right. Elizabeth and Robin, do you all need me to do anything else?
I think so.
Okay.
I think you are done.
Yay! All right. All right. Well, yeah, it was good talking with you all. And if Robin's still on here, definitely email me and keep in touch.
Yes, and we have your contact
Yep.
information, so she'll be able to do that. And we're so grateful.
Yeah.
Yep, there she is saying, yep,
Okay.
yep.
And Elizabeth, you keep in touch too, as
I
well.
will. I
Yeah.
would love to. We have to come
Okay.
visit you at Anschutz. So
Yes. Yeah.
so anyway, thank you so much. Maybe we'll see you at some of the other sessions.
Yeah.
And yeah, have a great one.
You too. Bye.
Okay. All right. Bye.